Sims, let's go.
Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Miracle Sims, and you're watching the GSL Talk Show. Tonight, we're going to be chatting with Mr. Logan Hufford, and he's going to be sharing all about sex addiction and much, much more. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's a miracle, baby. Shot chill, Miracle Sims, let's go. Yeah, it's a miracle, baby. Shot chill, Miracle Sims, let's go.
That I'm not the type of girl that goes.
Yeah, it's a miracle, baby. Shot
Wishing I would have a one night affair.
Welcome back to the GSL Talk Show. As you can see, I'm here with Mr. Logan Hufford. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Miracle. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the GSL Talk Show.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So let's start off by you telling me where you're from and then a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am born and raised here in Alaska, born and raised right here in Anchorage, Alaska, which is like the only real city in the entire state. It's about 250,000 people. And every other city is like a tenth of that. I actually live an hour north. I live in the valley in a little town called Wasilla. But yeah, born and raised up here and been married for 13 years next month. My wife, Carrie, and I have 4 awesome little monkeys, 4 little boys, although they're not quite as little anymore. My second oldest just has his birthday actually this morning, well, today. We're right in the middle of birthday season. So they are, by the end of the summer, they'll be 12, 11, 10, and 8. I mean, it's an awesome life. It's it's not perfect. It's not easy, but it's a lot of fun. It's very loud. And I mean, just to cut to the chase, I mean, it is a life that for the last several years at least, I don't ever take for granted because as we'll get into, this is not a corny statement. I don't deserve one bit of it. I actively did everything that a human could do to tarnish that, to throw it all away. And God has blessed me tremendously in ways that I don't deserve, beyond just salvation. So I've got a not perfect life, but an incredible life that is much more than I deserve.
Well, starting off strong here, I think, because I mean, first of all, that's amazing. Congratulations, right, on the marriage and family and whatnot. I mean, I do kind of want to ask some questions about Alaska, man. Is it?
Sure.
You said you born and raised there? You said?
Yeah.
So is snow all the time?
No, I mean, I'm actually, it's funny because the last show I was on, it was more of like what people might assume Seattle is like, where it was probably like 45 degrees outside, even though it's May, and it was pouring rain and it's just dreary. It's beautiful right now. Blue skies. I'm looking out my window at the office here. Blue skies. It's cool. It's like it's probably high 50s right now, but no, I mean a perfect day in Alaska in the summertime is really nice. 75, 80 degrees. In a good June or July is beautiful. You might only get like 10 of those days or 8 of those days a year. So you better hope you're off of work and you can go out and go to the lake or something like that.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, but obviously you love it, right? Because you haven't left, so.
I do. I mean, it completely took it for granted. Again, like when we get into our story, I mean, you'll hear a lot of things I took for granted throughout a lot of my life. But yeah, completely took for granted the beauty that was all around me. I mean, I think it's easy for anyone to take for granted what they have a lot of, especially if we're born into it, right? but yeah, I mean, just my wife also was born and raised in Alaska, but she's always been a very much like an outdoorsy girl, and she wants to go out and go camping and, get out in the water and that kind of thing.
Mm.
So being married to her, having 4 boys, it's like, all right, I guess we better go fishing, we better go camping. So like I'm learning these skills, I'm learning to appreciate, the rivers and the lakes and all these things that growing up is just like we'd go camping here and there, but yeah, it was different.
Mm.
So it's been pretty cool being a boy dad and getting out and getting dirty in nature.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it would be an awesome thing. Like, I haven't really gotten too deep into the exploring nature to that regard. I know me and my husband wants to take our son camping one of these old days. It was
Yeah.
funny. My church had well, we do services on Mondays now, and so um, they had like a little social gathering afterwards, and they were doing s'mores. And I'm like, well, technically, this is my first time roasting a marshmallow. And people were looking at me strange, like, oh, what do you mean? I'm like, I mean, we just never did. I just never did. I guess I was saving it for the camping thing, So I was
Right.
like, when I started to think about it, I'm like, okay, I'll just do it when we go camping. And then,
Right.
but they had it there at the church available. So I was like, okay, I might as well do it now then. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, some of my fellow members was like, what? First time roasting a marshmallow? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know. I guess, like you said, I guess maybe you take things for granted, or maybe you're not exposed to certain things, or whatever the case may be. And then when you finally do it, it's like, oh wow, So it's just very interesting. I'm looking forward to, I guess, getting out in nature more. I'm a boy mom, so I mean, I got one though. You say you have four, so I know that
Yeah.
has to be an amazing experience. Did you want a girl? Like, did you want to be a girl dad?
We would love a little girl. We'd love a daughter. My wife has always wanted a little girl. It's like just yet another reminder that hey, we can have ideas, we can have plans, we can have all these things. God's gonna give what He wants to give, right? Like
Yes.
we would love to have a little daughter, and
Mm.
for whatever reason, God's like, I'm gonna give you this recipe. This is what you got.
Mhm. I mean, what? You never know what he's gonna do. He might mix it up. You never know. You never know. But I mean,
We're open to it.
there you go. There you go. I mean, I know. See, every time I talk to you, one of you amazing people, I say this every time I'm on the talk show, and I feel like people are going to think that if somebody really watched this show consistently, they're gonna be like, here she go again, saying that somebody's resonating with her. But I like the things you're saying, about um taking things for granted, the things you're saying about, even God being in control and things of that nature, and maybe things not looking the way you thought, or you want this, but he's gonna do this. Like all of that stuff has really resonated with me in my personal life right now. And I'm just like, I don't know what all you're about to share about your testimony and whatnot, but I already know, like, I mean, I don't know. Like it's feeding me, so I believe that it'll feed whoever else needs to receive what you have to say. But so I mean, with all this great things going on, you're an amazing Alaska. You have this beautiful family. I mean, I don't know. Is this a good segue to hear how did you drop the ball? Are you fumbling the ball out here? Like what's happening, brother?
No, I mean it's like I said, there's not like a smooth transition because at the end of the day, it's or maybe any point could be a possible segue because the whole
Mhm.
point of like the life that was my life for a lot of years, the whole point of my story of what God brought me through and got me out of is it made no sense. It was insane. It was complete destruction. I was a raging sex addict for years,
Mm.
starting out with as a little kid, like 9 years old, starting to look at pornography, and then escalating to videos, hardcore pornography, learning to masturbate to that and get the high that came from that, which then went to, as I got a little bit older and got a little bit more, because it felt like, okay, maybe I can talk to girls, I can get attention from girls and seeking that attention. So then seeking that high, seeking the hit that came from that,
Mhm.
and got to the point that, so my wife and I got married young. Um, I was 20, she was 21. By the time we got married, June 4th, 2011, I had cheated on her multiple times. No, she did not know about any of them. And at that point, and for the next 6 years, I guess for the next five plus years, I was a car salesman, and I was good at selling cars, not because I was the smartest or the best salesperson, but I was good at building relationships. I was good at getting people to open up and trust me and be vulnerable and talk with me about what they needed. And those are all like totally fine traits, except I abuse those things. I abused those things to get what I wanted, whether it be just attention or, flirtation or sexual texting or sexual encounters. I chased after and took whatever I could take. I was a complete predator. I was a sociopath. And that continued for the next several years until 2015. By that point, I had multiple affairs spread out over the years. Porn was just a constant. Porn was like my maintenance drug. It was never the thing that I really, really wanted, but it was, I'll take that to get by kind of thing. I would flirt with basically any woman in my path just to get what I could get. And multiple affairs. Eventually got to the point where I was hiring prostitutes in addition to all this. And my wife, she knew about a year after we got married, it was a little bit less than a year. I wrote a letter because I felt so bad. I hated what I was doing, but it was, I knew it was wrong. There was no part of me that was like, oh, this is no big deal. Like I knew it was wrong. But every time I would do it, I would go, oh my gosh, I hate this. I hate myself. I'm never going to do this again. And, nothing would change about my behaviors. Nothing would change about how I made choices in life. I would continue, hanging out with the same people and doing the same things and talking to people the same way and expecting different results, And so I wrote that letter, confessed everything to her. She's broken. She's, has no idea how to respond. No woman should be prepared to know how to respond to that. Right. And I gave multiple confessions after that point. We call them staggered confessions because it was never a true repentance. It was just what we would refer to now as I vomited on her. Here's all this crap. And then I would walk away feeling better because I got it off my chest. And she's of course going, oh my gosh, I have all this crap on me. I have no idea what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And so in 2015, multiple affairs, porn, prostitutes, all this. I had an additional affair in July of 2015, and my wife did something that she'd never done before. She gave me an ultimatum. She said, if you don't get help, then I'm gone. We had 3 boys, and she was pregnant with our 4th boy. Mm-hmm. And she had never said anything like that before. And my wife does not speak rashly. I knew that she meant that, and that scared the crap out of me. So I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know what help was out there. I didn't know what that would look like. But I was like, okay, I didn't want to lose my family. By this point, I mean, I had given up any hope of a good life. I had given up any hope of anything other than just, hopefully I can keep my wife around. Hopefully I can keep my kids around because I don't want to lose that. But spiritually, complete darkness. I believed God was real. I believed that Jesus died on the cross to save people from their sins. Obviously, that wasn't for me. That was how I felt because given the choices I was making, there's no way I could be a Christian. But I believed all these things to be true, and yet there was no intimacy with God. Right? There was just complete darkness. Huge spiritual oppression during all those years. And for the next year almost, I played around. I started to try some things. I went to some meetings. I talked to some people. I took a test that was literally, are you a sex addict? And I passed that test with flying colors. But it was not until March of 2016 that God really put hope in my life. And even then it wasn't perfect traction. Wasn't perfect healing. May 19th is my sobriety day. And then got into a super, super rigorous and strict basically voluntary house arrest program called the Prodigals Mentorship Program. Graduated from that program 2 years later, May of 2018. My wife got into recovery shortly after I did for her trauma that I'd put her through, all the sexual betrayal, the emotional abuse that I'd put her through, all the manipulation that I'd done to her. And so I'm giving you like the super aerial view, but you know, recovery is our way of life from this point on. I've never stopped going to meetings. So now I lead a men's group for men struggling with sexual addiction. She leads a group for spouses that have been hurt in that way. So again, zero exaggeration when I said earlier, you know, every good thing I have on this earth, I don't deserve. You know, recovery has not made life perfect, but it has made life easier. It has enabled me to, you know, to understand how to interact with life, you know, to understand how to interact with people, to how to interact with stress, you know, all these different things. It's enabled, you know, my wife Carrie to be able to deal with, you know, the worst betrayal a husband can do to his wife, you know, multiple times over, and recognizing it wasn't about her, you know, that it wasn't any failing of hers, it wasn't any fault of hers, and to actually not just ignore it, right? Not like, oh, okay, fine, I'm not going to divorce him and I'll just pretend it doesn't exist. Like, no, she dove headlong into recovery, and it's been an incredible thing. So again, I know that was like the super 30,000 foot view, but yeah, that's where we've come from. That's where I've come out of. And right now I'm just here to shout from rooftops, you know, that, hey, there's a different way. There's a better way.
Man, first of all, so many things there. I definitely got to tell you, thank you so much again. Because, well, for your transparency about everything. I mean, I know this is probably not the easiest thing, right, to shout from the rooftops and things, even as I share my testimonies and stuff like that. I mean, it's easier as you do it, I guess, but it's not like the thing you want to share and say, you know, I'm sure, and stuff like that. But at the same time, um, I believe that that's why we go through things, or that's why God allows us to go through things, or whatever the case may be, because it's for someone else. Like, it's great you got out, right? It's great that, you know, everything is working out and things of that nature. But you know, I think a lot of times, or sometimes, right, the enemy can use that as like, oh, be silent about that thing,
Right.
when you have something that somebody else needs. So I mean, obviously you know that and whatnot, and you know, here we are talking about, but um, you know, I just want to commend you, you know, saying give credit where credit is due to those that are out here, you know, doing the work and whatnot. So once again, I know I shared this with you before we started recording, but again, it just another thing that confirms things, you know what I mean, to me in my heart and mind, again, about what all is going on with me in GSL and whatnot. Like, um, in the beginning, I used to defend it a lot. Like, I used to feel like I had to defend, you know, what God was doing with me and for me through this platform. And then I'm like, I don't do that much anymore. You know what I'm saying? But I do still appreciate the people that come and see past the name or whatever people think about it, right? And so for me, like people like you, I'm sure you could go anywhere, sure, and talk, right? But at the same time, I just really recognized, at least back in the day when I'm going through my own struggles and whatnot, like I was seeing that there's just no place to be open, honest, transparent about everything. It seems like people are holding back and they're not being completely honest about the ups and the downs of the situation. And I'm trying to figure out what to do, you know, and stuff like that. And so these is the reasons. If anybody's questioning, like this is why, like this gentleman, his testimony is just as valid as hearing about, you know, let's stay pure and the virgin person and whatnot. Like both is valid, both are important to hear. And you know, we need spaces to do so. And so it sounds like you and your wife are creating spaces for that to happen. You know, obviously you all had a place to go through and go to and through, you know, your recovery or therapy, however you saw it. And this is sounding like a lot of great, good stuff to me. So, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're talking. Anywho, so there's so many places to go because I definitely want to touch on the marriage aspect of this situation because I feel like again the enemy is just really attacking marriages one way or another, and it's like using the just different things, like even at simple things, but then obviously huge things like what you shared, right? um but at the same time I like to like go back to the beginning and whatnot because I think a lot of times I know I had to go back in my own, like when I was as I share my testimony and stuff, I went back to the beginning. I was like, why am I the way I am? Where did this come from? Things of that nature. And so you mentioned 9 years old. And so if you don't mind, would you like to share with us, like, what was your introduction to these things? Like who, I mean, maybe not you don't have to tell me who, but I feel like now you can correct me if I'm wrong because I know everybody's life and experience is different.
Sure.
But I feel like kids, don't necessarily come out of the womb like with, tendencies of like, or you know what I'm saying, or knowing things. Like I don't know, like
It's a tricky thing to understand for sure. Yeah.
like I feel like in my, I think maybe it's based on my experience, so maybe I'm biased right here, maybe or something like that. But I just feel like someone introduced these things to you for you to get at least like, do you was there an introduction? That's probably a better way to think.
Yeah.
Just ask you and your particular things. So was there an introduction of some sort? Like
just
what
to
started this? What kicked
No,
this
for
off?
sure. I'll touch on that for sure. And just to be super transparent, again, like I'm coming on podcast to talk about, my sexual addiction and my story of recovery and what God has done. So I'm not coming in on here to be vague or to like lightly touch on things. There's no question that I won't go into. Obviously time's going to limit us. I'm not going to be shy, about responding to any questions. So we can go wherever we got to go. So yeah, I say all the time, my story is very unique in one area.
Okay.
The way that it started out, my origin story, to look at it that way, is incredibly boring. And that's what makes it unique, because I have met so many people in recovery. No, like you're going to see what I mean. I've met so many people in recovery, from sexual addiction, spouses, other addictions. And I mean, to be honest, I mean, obviously there's studies you could look up. Anecdotally, I'm just thinking about people that I know. I mean, it's gotta be 80, 90, 95 maybe % of people in recovery have very acute abuse stories, very intense trauma, whether it was sexual abuse, other forms of abuse, multiple, broken homes, right? Like all of this stuff. Maybe it was a singular moment. A lot of times it was an unhealthy lifestyle of the family. And in all of those cases, very, very tragic stuff. And I had none of that. I had a home that, again, there's no perfect family, but I had a very loving home. I had a very loving family. There was never abuse. There was never a point where I didn't feel safe with my family. And I don't say those words lightly. We talked about taking things for granted. I took that super for granted as a kid. Had no clue how good I have it. And so, for me to look back, and I've done a lot of looking back, in recovery, in the program, and since then, and sharing my story. And there were, and I don't know. I mean, I don't want to like make something, I don't want to make too much out of something and try to create something. But sometimes I wonder, like, did God, did he orchestrate that just to show, like, yeah, it doesn't have to come from something. Like, as a human, I'm pretty good at figuring out how to sin just on my own, right? I'm pretty good at figuring out how to go away from God's plan all on my own. I don't need Satan to tempt me. I don't need people to lead me astray. I'll do it just fine on my own. So, I mean, I wonder if that's part of it. Is like, God didn't let me have a crutch to point to and go, oh, well, that person did this to me. It's like, no. I went and found it. I mean, so again, the home that I grew up in. So for one, I'm younger than some, but I'm older than some. But in the late 90s, I mean, we're talking, dial-up internet. There's no iPads floating around. There's no smartphones. And definitely in my home, There were no magazines. There was no Playboy, none of that.
Mm.
So where I literally started, nobody would have called it porn. In and of itself, it's not porn, but it was my introduction. It was the lingerie and swimwear ads, or the pictures of lingerie and swimwear in the JCPenney catalog, the annual catalog. That there's a giant catalog that you get like at Christmas time. And I remember I would see that, and however I came upon those pictures or whatever, oh, there's these pictures of women, and I liked how I felt. I liked how the women looked. I didn't know how sex worked. I didn't know how masturbation worked. I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't know that I didn't know about that, if that stuff even makes sense. Like I liked how I felt. And so that was my start to getting a hit off of porn, even though, again, technically it wasn't even porn. I mean, that's not to get too much on a tangent, but like that's one thing about porno is, porn is in my opinion is anytime, and obviously there's legal definitions too, but it's like porn is when I am sexualizing an image of someone else. So by that definition, it was pornography. But then I started going into real, again, what most people would call real pornography, right? And naked pictures, and then hardcore videos, and sexual videos, that kind of thing. But it was a progression, and that's part of it too. Is addiction is progressive. It does not stay. It is not static. It will take me further and further into a cave. And the type of pornography that I watched when I was 22 was different than what I watched when I was 12. The ways that I would interact with women when I was 24 was very different than how I would have interacted with a woman when I was 18. The things that I would allow myself to do, say, and think were extremely different the more I got into this stuff, because it took more and more, to equate it to drugs. It took a harder drug for me to get high, right? It took a deeper, harder, whatever words you want to use. I needed more. I needed more different. And that was part of the thing that, that my wife, of course, again, she shouldn't have ever had to deal with any of this, but it's, she eventually learned through the process of recovery, is like, it wasn't about her not providing something for me. She would tell you now, she shares this in her testimony. Her response initially, nobody even told her to do this. This was just her feeling of like, I guess this is what I should do. When she learned about, me committing adultery multiple times, her response was, okay, I guess I'll be a better wife. I'll be sexier. I'll be more sexually available. I need to make sure that he doesn't have a reason to cheat, because she felt like I was cheating on her because she wasn't enough. And of course, looking back on it, looking at it, from a zoomed out 30,000 foot view, there's only one thing that my wife Carrie could never have been for me. She couldn't be new. She couldn't be different. And that's what I was chasing this whole time. So there was nothing she could do to be the thing that I was chasing, because I was chasing new and I was chasing different.
Well, a couple of things before we get, because we got to definitely, like I said, get back into the marriage side of the conversation and talk way more about that. But well, one, I definitely want to just acknowledge that again, like, you're not alone, right? Like, we all have sinned and fallen short. None of us is worthy of the blessings that God has given us. You know what I'm saying? So nobody can look at you, right, and be like, oh, his thing is worse than my thing, and or any of that type of stuff, even though that's what we try to do. But obviously, again, that's what makes the even playing field, at least according to the Bible. So that's what I believe. So you're not alone, brother. Hey, I'll probably look right there with you in that regard, right? And so that's one thing. Just get that off the, out of the way. No, but I guess the other thing too is, like, I mean, I can acknowledge, like, well, one, I appreciate you again sharing, what happened and whatnot. And you might be right. There probably is, again, some purpose to your pain, right? Or the origin and things of that nature. And I will say this, because I know what I said earlier kind of does make it seem like, I know I am coming a little biased. I do feel like introductions are like one of the things, but at the same time too, I can also acknowledge like generational things, and and spiritual things in that regard. And even, hey, the ad itself as well. I mean, I know I'm kind of partnering with a brand. It's called Romantic Blessings, and they're very intentional about providing images of the lingerie without the models, and things of that nature for couples, for Christian couples and whatnot, to be able to shop for, their time, and the time that God has blessed, right? And anyway, and so, and so I get it, you know what I'm saying? I do get that. Again, a young, like, I mean, I remember being in the hair store one day, and how old was he then? He might have been 5. No, wait, 4. He was either 4 or 5, but my son, I'm in the hair store. I'm looking for, like, I don't know if I was looking for stockings or whatever I was looking for. And in the stocking, there was the lady with the putting on the stockings or whatever. And I noticed he stared at it for a while, and I'm like, what is he looking at? And I was like, okay, so let's not, so it can be very impressionable. And I think that's why they do it, Now, some people can understand, like, oh, we're just trying to sell our lingerie or our stockings or whatever it is. But it's like, some people knowingly and then unknowingly can be doing the work of the enemy. So, so there probably is, again, some, I guess, cause for the origin or whatever the case may be. So, but yeah, so okay, let's go to the marriage, right? So marriage stuff, right? So you let your wife know this. Obviously, she's blaming herself internally. I mean, I'm just, as a wife, I mean, that's most likely what I would do too. Like, well, what can I do to help? Because to be your husband's helpmate is, what we're supposed to be, and all this different type of stuff. And I mean, and now I think you've already addressed the whole why, I guess you would say. Because I mean, I know, again, as believers, we are taught, according to the word of God, that it's time for sex and all these things. Marriage is the time, right? But then, of course, it seems like once you get married, now the narrative is, married people don't do this and that and the other, right? And so then now, I guess situations like yours, maybe even situations like mine, I'm over here. I feel like I'm the one with the highest drive so I have to be patient a lot and things of that nature, right? And it don't always feel good or know that I want to do it. And I feel like, again, maybe perhaps the Lord is putting you in my life to remind me of some things right now. But anywho, aside from that, the thing is, so this marriage battle, right? Of course, the enemy is coming from marriages. So now you let your wife know what all is going on. Now I think I know the answer to this question, but I guess I'll ask it anyway. You've already mentioned that, okay, you had this, I guess you were battling with what you were doing. You didn't want to do it. And it's just like any other sin. It's just like the Bible tells us that, I mean, you could be battling with things. You know what's right, you still do wrong. That thorn in your side, like Paul, right? So I mean, I guess I had to just narrow it down. So what made you write the letter? Because I mean, obviously, God did, his time is up, but hey, I don't want to put words in your mouth. So what made you write the letter and go ahead and really, like, start the snowball effect of what is now the recovery and saving of your family and marriage?
Guilt is why I wrote the letter. And with all the confessions, starting out with that very first one with the letter, and then the verbal confessions I would go on to give multiple times over the next few years, I don't even know if it was like, if that, on one hand, maybe that was a foreshadowing of some good things that would eventually come. The part of me that wanted different, the part of me that wanted to stop, the part of me that wanted to hang on to my family. In that way, it was a positive foreshadowing. And yet at the same time, I guess at the end of the day, it's not a binary. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? It was mixed, because there were those positive foreshadowings. And yet it also was another manifestation of my selfishness, where it feels good to get it off my chest. It was like I'm going to confession, I'm just going to get it off my chest, because it doesn't feel good to hold on to guilt, right? It doesn't feel good to hold on to secrets. Nobody enjoys holding on to all of this just rotten crap inside myself. No, that doesn't feel good. It felt good to release it. Now, was there some fear and was there some shame and all that? Yeah. but that did not outweigh, it felt good to let it out. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like I got the benefits of confession. To put it, what I'm about to say is extremely unhealthy thinking. I'm not. What I'm doing is just sharing where my thought process was at the time. I got the benefits of confessing, and I also I had my cake and I ate it too, because I also just kept doing the things that were impulsive and felt good to me in the sense of,
Mm-hmm.
all right, and I got all that off my chest, and I'll go back to work and I'll keep on flirting with girls and seeking out attention. And I mean, realistically, like every time I would confess, there would always be a long pause between physical sexual encounters. I had to like ramp myself up to get over those barriers again.
Mm-hmm.
But the flirting never stopped. The you know the I was gonna say little. They're definitely not little things. The the things that weren't quite as noticeable maybe to everyone around me, that stuff doesn't stop. Um, you know, to give like examples of what that looked like. Again, I mean, it was, my phone was mine and mine to me. You best believe if we're going driving down, an hour or 2 hours away, like to Seward, which is, going down to the ocean, like we're gonna go down there. I didn't play music from my phone. I had my phone in my pocket
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want the music to stop because the call's coming through from who knows where, right? Or my phone's not gonna be face up in case a text comes through. It's in my pocket. It's locked. Um, I'm going to go out for drinks with my buddies after work. Am I intentionally going out specifically and only to find a woman to have an encounter with? Usually not. But is that the kind of thing that I should be doing to be safe and intentional and healthy? No. But that was just what I did. I remember when I first got into, well, I don't even know if I was like sober yet. It was in the early stages of attending meetings and that kind of thing. I was starting to take things somewhat seriously, but I was still completely in my infancy from a recovery standpoint. And once or twice before, I had gone to my boss's poker nights, and like I didn't play, so I would just deal, and I was the dealer, and we'd have fun and we'd hang out and have drinks and everything. And I was going to do that again. And I remember bringing it up to some guys in recovery, and they're like, yeah, is that safe? Is that a good idea? Is that a healthy thing for Logan to be doing? And that was part of the thing too, is they got in my face. They would hold my feet to the fire. That doesn't necessarily mean that they would tell me what to do. They would ask me questions. They would get my brain working, like questioning, okay, is this a good idea? And like realistically, they were being super, super nice, to even, voice it that way. And yet I remember thinking like, well, what's wrong with this? Like, I'm just going to be having some drinks and, be out till midnight. And like, what's the big deal? Because in my head, I was so far gone into unhealthy behavior that if I wasn't like literally having an interaction with a woman in person, then I guess I'm being pretty safe. Like, because my way of interacting with the world, my way of thinking was just so jacked up. And so I would cross over like 3 or 4 healthy levels of boundaries that a healthy person would have without even realizing that I'm 3 or 4 levels beyond where I should be, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what recovery did was, I literally had to structure out and write out boundaries and rules for living and, things that I would do if I was tempted and, correctives that I would implement, tools. I literally had to write these things out and get feedback from them, present them to the group, and actually practice them. It wasn't just, all right, we're going to pray more and we're going to try really hard not to. It's like, yeah, we're going to pray. We're going to be reading the Bible. It was a Christ-centered recovery program. And yet it was also a lot of practical tools as well.
Nice. I mean, that's awesome. We definitely got to talk more about, this particular place as well, because it's good that these things are in place for such situations and issues. Because I mean, if you were going through it and couldn't find, I mean, you could probably get some type of help that doesn't, you know, encourage moral values and things of that nature, or you could, worst case scenario, not find any help at all, and then just go back into the cycle. So, God be glory for that place and those people that were able to hold your feet to the fire and get you to where you are today. So I mean, okay, so you threw up on your wife, okay? And so I mean, I know you probably don't remember every word she said, and I mean, maybe she had to come in one of these old days and share her side of the story if she wants to, and whatnot. But like, is there anything that you do remember about like maybe that first time you told her, and like, her response, and if it's okay to go there, but
Sure. I'm going to do my best to not like give you a really like from a radio perspective, podcasting perspective. I'm going to try not to give you a bad answer. Um,
mm,
I don't have a lot of memories of how she
mhm,
responded, and there's a few reasons for that. Number one,
mhm,
um, there, there, I think there's probably two main things. I mean, yeah, it was a while ago. I mean, the
yeah,
first, when I wrote that letter, I mean that was, it was 12 years ago.
mm-hmm,
So there's that, but
mm-hmm,
also number one, extreme selfishness. I mean, the idea, the term main character syndrome, right? I'm the main
mm-hmm,
character and everything revolves around me. I still struggle with that sometimes, for sure. It may, but I mean, in that time of my life, I mean, that was just how I operated.
mm-hmm,
Everything was to serve Logan. Everything was about me.
mm-hmm,
So, um, not focusing on exactly how she would respond, not absorbing her words. And I mean, yeah, that I absolutely was not focused on that. Because again, I was there to confess, to feel better, not
mm-hmm,
necessarily to be better.
mm,
The other part, and it's closely linked with that, is I compartmentalized on steroids. I mean, we think about compartmentalization of like, okay, I've got my work life and I've got my family life, or this person hurt me, but I'm not going to take that into my day. Or there's different
mm,
ways that we can compartmentalize, and then there's some areas where it can be a healthy tool. Um, I would venture to say compartmentalization should be a specialty tool. If anything, it should never be something that I'm using all the time.
mm,
The only way I could come home at night and you know, say goodnight to my boys and give them a smooch on the forehead, right? The only way I could give my wife a hug when I would get home, knowing that I was with a prostitute that day, knowing who I was texting, after my boys went to sleep, knowing what I was going to be doing the next day or the next week or the next month. The only way I could do that and not go like literally completely clinically crazy was to completely block out. And I had home life and then I had everything else life. And
mm,
the conversations I would have with people, the ways that I would interact with people, my thought life. I mean, I don't know the science behind this, so this is my personal theory. But I mean, it's definitely not just me. I've heard this from a lot of people. I mean, I really jacked up my memory.
mm,
That was something I always prided myself on, was having a really good memory. And in some ways, I still do in other areas. But like when it comes to memories from that time of my life, it's pretty darn foggy because
mm,
I had to, I'm doing air quotes because I had to, in order to protect my addiction, I
mm,
had to compartmentalize everything just to like operate, just to get by. So that was a really, really long way, and I apologize, a really long way of saying I don't remember her verbiage. I don't remember. I remember that at first, she was extremely hurt, extremely broken, obviously. Um, and there were some elements of like, I can't believe, how could you? But there was also some elements of like, I didn't realize it at the time, but it makes sense looking back. There was also elements of her going like, all right, well, surely I could have done better. I could have done more to prevent this.
mm,
And then as time went on, like 2014, 2015, still hurting, but she was very numb by that point. She'd become hardened. And she would tell you also, I mean, she literally, you got to remember too, like she's got babies in diapers, she's pregnant, off and on. So we had 4 kids in 5 years. So she's got a husband coming home, confessing an affair he had that day, or she's got a husband, texting her, I'm so sorry I did this again. And she's got to go change a diaper she's got to go breastfeed. She's got to go to a doctor's appointment. Like, so she was just trying to live life in survival mode, let alone everything that I was doing. So she got to the point where she literally was just like, she did her own, compartmentalization, her own blocking out of it, not ignoring it, not pretending that it didn't exist, but almost kind of, that's it. In practicality, that's almost what it became. And that's why, again, I just emphasize, like, 2015 is so huge because God gave her the strength to do something that she had not done before. And that was, give me that ultimatum. I always tell people, the incredible thing that she did, because some people like will come up to us after we share a testimony, or I've had people say it to me, if I'm not with my wife, like, oh my gosh, it's so incredible that she's so loyal. It's so incredible that she stayed with you. And I always emphasize, like, and I get where they're coming from. They're trying to be encouraging and supportive. And the incredible thing is not that she stayed with me. She had every right to leave me. I mean, biblically and otherwise. The incredible thing is that she had the courage to stand up to her abuser and say, I can't stop you from hurting me. I can't control you. But if you continue to do this, then you will lose me. That's the incredible thing that she did. I'm thankful that she, in the long run, that she stayed loyal, but I'm thankful that she did it on the condition that I made serious change. Because up to that point, she was not serving anyone just by staying loyal. It was an incredibly hard thing for her to stand up and say that to me, but it's what she needed to do. I'm so thankful she did it.
Yeah, I mean, I do wish she was here, honestly, because so she could be able to,
I know.
whatever. No, but just telling that side, she's welcome. Come on in if you want to come. But no, but I think, but I am curious to hear your thought in regards to this. There's so many questions to ask at this point. No, okay. So one, I'm curious to know, like, with everything that was going on, because obviously she gave you space in between to, you said it. So it went, you had the first confession, and then it happened multiple times after that. It seemed like it was like a year or two. Am I getting that right? Of
So
still going forward with the same type of, or was it like a year or?
As far as from the ultimatum to sobriety?
Yeah, the initial you telling her and then the ultimatum. Like, how long was that? Like a
Okay,
year?
so to circle back and kind of give that recap. So we got married June 4th, 2011. So it was less than a year. We actually just had this conversation because I was like, we were talking about some of this stuff, and I so it was, I think it was like 6 months after we got married, because it was winter time. So that would have been the end of 2011 or the start of 2012. Okay. And then when she gave me the ultimatum was the summer of 2015. So that was 3.5 years later.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, a little bit longer than I was giving it. I was giving it like 1 or 2 years. So that was a lot of time, right? To not say get it together or something, right? But to, between when you first told her about the first thing and then when she gave you the ultimatum. I guess my first question is, like, did you just, like, by telling her and whatnot, did you expect that she would stay, or did you kind of think that she would leave? Like, or didn't care at all either way? You just wanted to clear your own heart and mind. Like, you didn't have any thought to, like, what she would do? Like,
sadly, I did fully expect her to stay, because again, complete main character syndrome. Like, well, you've stayed this long, you're not going to leave now, right? Like, I wouldn't have said that, but that's absolutely where my actions were, and I think that's where my mindset was. Is that she's just going to stay.
Well, I think so. You're saying as it continued, you just felt like she was going to stay,
right? Because if she's been willing to stay through the first several, I guess she'll just stick it out. which is a terrible thing to say, right? It's a terrible mindset, and yet that's where my mindset was at. The only difference in that was in 2015, I had cheated on her multiple times, and almost every time it was a one-time sexual encounter, usually with a lot of emotional and verbal leading up to that. But it was like we would have a one-time sexual encounter, and then it would be done. And in 2015, it was very different. It was a month-long affair with multiple encounters with this person, and it was somebody that Carrie didn't know personally. My wife didn't know personally, but she knew of this person, and she like had questioned me about my relationship with this person. And so by Carrie's own, by my wife's own, from her own mouth, she would tell you it was the most hurtful affair that I'd ever had, on multiple levels. And so when that affair was going on during this month long, it was July of 2015. During that time, it was the first time in my life where I actually had the thought of, this is pre-ultimatum, but it was the first time in my life where I had the thought of like, okay, like this has been going on for a month. Like, how long is this going to go? Because that never happened before. It's like, how long is this going to go on? And I remember having the thought, like, am I going to just have a mistress and I'll just have this other life that I'll just have to, do? I remember I had all the thoughts. I had, what if I end up having a kid with this woman? Like, what's that going to be like? What are my kids going to do? I remember thinking about like everything, and it was just, it wasn't excitement. It was just like a practical, like, which is kind of odd because everything that I was doing was destructive and chaotic and just complete impulsive. And yet in this moment, it was almost like I paused, not to be healthy, but to be pragmatic, which is weird. And just think through, like, I wonder what things will look like from a practical level. And amazingly, God gave me, I do believe that God gave me just a little bit, or maybe a lot of it, of strength in that moment. As dark as things were and as evil as my actions were, we had an encounter, which is, one of several. And after that was done, when I'm saying encounter, I'm being vague. It's not to be vague, it's to not be graphic, right? But that's why I choose that verbiage.
Okay.
And after that, literally, I'm in the car with this woman, and I said, okay, I got to be all done. I'm going to delete your number right now. I'm going to block your number. I'm going to ask you to do the same, but I can't make you. I said, please don't contact me, and I'm not going to contact you again. And I'm thankful for that. Again, like, all of my choices were still very, very self-motivated. But I am very, very thankful that God gave me that resolve in that moment to at least do that. Because who knows how long it would have kept up. Because then that was when, then I confessed all that. And that was when my wife gave me the ultimatum, shortly after that.
Again, so many things, because people like to try to find loopholes, and they'll talk about different things that are, well, it's in the Bible and God allowed it. So, like, for example, the multiple wives and things of that nature. That's a whole nother conversation. Like I said, if I don't know, bro, we might have to do a series.
There
We
was
might
no
come
part
back.
of me. No, there was no part of me that ever thought that what I was doing was morally okay. There was definitely part of me that wanted to keep chasing it, but I knew I was chasing sin.
Yeah, like, honestly, we haven't even gotten into that yet, and I just feel like I don't know what the Lord gonna do with this whole thing. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like you could come back, your wife come. I don't know. At this point, y'all could be a series on the shadow for me. That's about how I feel right now, because just how important I feel like this conversation is. But if we can try to get a few more of these details back into this,
I'm more than happy that we can do another recording at a different time. I would be more than happy to do that.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, I was gonna ask one more. Okay, one more question, and then I guess we'll wrap, right? If you feel led to. Um, the the sex life with you and your wife during this time. like, do you feel, because I know you were saying that she was, questioning and feeling like she needed to be more and do more and things of that nature. So was she changing and doing these things for you, and then somehow you still, so you were having both things, or was it more so like she cut things off and then now you have more fuel to do your things? Like, what
Yeah.
did your guys' situation look like?
Yeah. No,
Like
she,
after these confessions, like,
so I'll just, her behavior was never anything other than giving me whatever she could give me,
mm,
and just opening herself up to be whatever she could be for me. Um,
mm,
she whether it would have been the right thing or the wrong thing or whatever. I mean, she there was never a point where she closed herself off for me. There was never a point where she it was like, and again, this is another one of those things where, like, just like my upbringing, like I had no crutch to point to. I had nothing to point to be like, well, my wife did this, or there was this resentment. It was like, no, no, no.
mm,
I had everything that somebody could ask for, in a wife, and yet I still chose sin. So
mm,
again, I don't know necessarily if that was for that very specific reason, but at the bare minimum, I'll take from it the lesson of I don't need anything to push me towards sin. I will go chase it. If that's what if I'm choosing unhealthy decisions, if I'm choosing to not have a healthy infrastructure, I will go find sin. I don't need anything to push me. Just like I didn't need anything to push me when I was 9, I also didn't need to put anything to push me when I was married.
mm. And that, honestly, that is being human, bro. That's across the board. All of us. What he's saying is each and every one of us. And that's the importance of what Jesus did. I hate to cut this conversation off because honestly, I feel like there's so much more to dive into. But like I said, you are definitely welcome back anytime. Feel free. Is there anything else you would like to share with us before you go? Like just something to think about, or if you decide to come back, whatever the case may be, just anything you would like to share before we wrap.
Well, I mean, this is maybe more so to you than your audience, but I would just say, I mean, yeah, I would love to talk again, and especially, I mean, we've touched on some recovery, we've touched on some, a little bit of like our marriage now, but if you're listening, like, I'm sure there's folks going, well, like, how the heck is there any trust in that relationship, right? I mean, I talked about years of betrayal of every kind, and yet, just to give like a little glimpse, I mean, in 2018, right before I graduated from my recovery program, my wife and I and our boys went down to Arizona to visit family, and we all went down there for a week. But she wanted to stay down there for 3 extra weeks to be with her grandma, and then she would come back with the boys, and that was planned out. I couldn't take enough time off work, to be down there for the whole time, and so she knew that I was going to be home alone for 3 weeks, which at the time it felt like it felt like we were miles away from the addiction, because we were almost 2 years in, and yet looking back on it, it's like, it's kind of crazy that she was okay with that, right? And again, she would tell you, like, she didn't worry about what was going to happen now, and it wasn't out of naivety. It was twofold. Number one, she had built trust in me. There was trust, not because of things that I said, but because of believable behavior, that I acted differently. My behavior was different. The other part was she had complete, like, trust and submission to the people that God put in our path.
Mm,
That the man that was mentoring me, the men that were part of the mentorship team that was working with me. I mean, I had to write out a multiple page safety plan for this vacation, as well as a separate safety plan for the time alone. This was not like, all right, I'm going to try really hard to be safe while you're gone. Like, no. There was like, I don't remember how long my safety plan was for the time alone. It was probably like 7 pages, detailing my itinerary, detailing my schedule, detailing the things that I'm going to be doing when I'm not at work. I mean, it was all of this stuff, where I wasn't just hoping that things would go better than they used to. It was making a plan, having a ton of accountability, having a ton of healthy interaction with other people, and that doesn't guarantee that I'll make good choices, but
Mhm.
it ups the odds by a lot. And so, that just to give like a little bit of glimpse of, we didn't build trust by accident. And as much as when I was in my addiction, I wanted God to snap his fingers and just heal me, right? And God was like, no, this is not going to be a quick thing. It was going to be something that took a lot of time and a lot of effort. Of course, God could, right? He could have snapped his fingers and I could have just never been tempted again. Well, if we read through the Bible, that's not usually what God does. Usually people ask for that. And God's like, no, you're going to be going on a journey, whether it's, it's temptation or whatever.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's something I would definitely love to get into, in another conversation is just
Mhm.
what did it take? Because it wasn't by accident. It wasn't easy. It wasn't something that we just came across. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of intentionality. But those are things that even if somebody doesn't live in Alaska, even if somebody doesn't have a faith-based sexual addiction group near them, although they might, I never knew that there was groups around me. There are tools that people can utilize. There are tools that couples can work on. There are things that we can do on a practical level, not to replace a relationship with Christ, but practical things that we can do to actually implement what I'm reading in my Bible or what I'm learning in a Bible study or what I'm hearing from a sermon. Because that's the thing. I mean, just like I shared from the very start of our conversation, I was never devoid of understanding about God. I was never devoid of having people around that taught me the right things. There was this giant canyon between the things that I knew in my head and then the things that I was actually doing. And at some point, it felt like this canyon is so big, I don't even know how to get across it.
Mhm.
And that's not me blaming anything on my addiction, or it was just I got myself so trained. I did that. That's my fault. But I got myself so trained to doing things a certain way that it did feel like, okay, well, I don't even know if it's possible to do things differently. So again, that's why I'm here. Is just to again shout from those rooftops that yes, there is a way to do things differently.
Man, bro, but Logan, you got to come back now. Listen, look, I'm holding you hostage. Let them know we got to come back. There's so much to talk about, man. Yes, the recovery. I don't know if you want to share some resources or not, or if you could just give me links or something like that. If you want me to attach certain information, feel free to let me know. But yeah, man, I just feel like there's so much there, not just to the story, but like um that could hopefully be healing, encouraging, and inspiring to the next person, right?
Right.
I would love to hear more about your journey with Christ and how how that was happening. You know what I mean? Like what was going on with all of that throughout all of this. I mean, you obviously have acknowledged that you knew of God, things of that nature. You knew you were sinning, things of that nature. And because sometimes people don't know that side, or we do, and then we're struggling, and so that's I'm sure is a whole conversation by itself, but I don't know. We could probably sit here and go on and on. So I guess I'll go ahead and let you go. But thank you so much for sharing what you have. Like I said, I can't wait to you come on back and share whatever else you would like to share with us.
For
You're welcome
sure.
back anytime.
No, I would love to do that.
Just wishing I would have a one night affair.
Thank you so much for watching the GSL Talk Show, and thank you to Mr. Logan for joining us tonight and being open and transparent about his testimony. Friends, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you are going through sex addiction or any type of addiction, please understand that there is other options, and the best option is Christ. Have a good night.